Resident Evil Code Veronica is a game I've always been curious about. I grew up with the original trilogy, and I loved RE4 despite it being such a different game. I checked out with RE5 because I found it to be too much, and I came back for RE7 when the slow horror tone returned. Over these 25 years, I've played every game in the numbered series, 0 through 8. But I never played any of the spin-offs. I never really had any interest. I couldn't tell you why. But ever since I started talking about my love for Resident Evil here, Code Veronica has been amongst the highest recommendations from the viewers. And with a little nudge from my buddy over at Nerdspace Games, I finally took the dive. I just finished it, and I was blown away by how authentic of a classic Resident Evil experience it was. I shouldn't be surprised, it was developed at the same time as RE3, coming out only 3 months later. I guess it's just the fact that it came out on the Dreamcast and it's not a numbered title, and what I knew of the story was pretty wacky. I wasn't prepared to play something that was so in line with the original trilogy. If survival horror is largely defined by its map design and puzzles, which I think it is, Code Veronica is one of the most ambitious survival horror titles I've ever played. The game is separated into 2 maps, first on an island with a large military base, later at a research facility in Antarctica. You visit them both twice as you switch from Claire to Chris, which was a surprise to me. I thought Chris would be an unlockable character to replay the campaign, but you actually switch to him halfway, and that was pretty cool. The island map is actually several maps, creating an area so large it kind of feels like you're running around the mansion, the courtyard, and the underground tunnels of the original game all at the same time. We're looking at multi-floor buildings, some as deep as 5 levels, a submarine that takes you to another part, multiple elevators. It's huge, and it's very easy to lose track of where you are and where you want to go. I greatly enjoyed all the exploration and backtracking, piecing together connecting routes and visually associating each space on the map with the room it refers to. But I also feel like if the maps are going to be this big and have so many puzzle locations that you have to revisit, some multiple times, the game really would have benefited from a Silent Hill style map that makes note of important locations. Silent Hill maps are complex enough to need those notes, telling you this is where the clock was, this is where the puzzle box was. It would have saved on a lot of unnecessary feelings of where the hell was that thing I saw 2 hours ago? Or if not points of interest, they could have given each room a name. But the maps themselves are very well put together, and the emphasis on puzzle solving was truly a delight. Code Veronica brings back the first Resident Evil's mechanic of 3D item inspection to find hidden features, and it uses this to its full potential. Many items have to be inspected, as well as combined or even modified in some way. Puzzles range from very easy to moderately challenging. The Ashford family painting puzzle was fantastic, as you figure out the references to family members in the historical document, and the paperweight solution was just the right amount of clever. Resident Evil puzzles are generally at their best when they combine a number of simple concepts into something where you have to use your brain to figure out how they work together. But this oil pressure puzzle, I like the idea of it. It reminds me of the lab puzzle in the RE2 remake, but while I was figuring it out, I was just constantly inputting the first value over and over mindlessly, and it turns out that will eventually solve the puzzle. So, looks like we've discovered the ancestor of Village's infamous piano puzzle. Thank God this isn't representative, as the rest of the game is filled with so many quality puzzles appropriate to a Resident Evil game. I have to admit, though, that these locations just don't really stick with me. Compared to the iconic Spencer Mansion, the RPD, the streets of Raccoon City and the Clock Tower, the Guardhouse, the RE2 Underground Labs, Code Veronica's military base, while being well designed in terms of gameplay, is far less compelling. I'm not ruling out the power of nostalgia, but it's just so normal. It doesn't have many standout musical themes for the rooms, and artistically I find it to be fairly bland. Not just because of the way it's designed, but it's also because of the graphics, which is tied to the camera. This may be one of the more controversial parts of this video. I'm very happy that Code Veronica generally preserves the camera system of the original, allowing for rooms to be framed in different ways, creating moments of suspense with unseen threats, and presenting certain things from dramatic angles. Many of us are fans of the cinematography in the original games. Code Veronica, being a fully 3D world and not set against still painted backgrounds, gives us an evolved version of the original camera, now able to move with Claire a lot of the time, cutting down on disorienting angle switches and helping the game include more combat now that the camera is more user-friendly. But something is lost here. If you grew up with those original games, you remember how incredible it was to see a game that had such lifelike environments, because the painted backgrounds made the game look far more realistic than anything 1995 technology could produce. Now that we have a game on better technology, we can ditch the backgrounds and create a whole world in polygons. But the technology isn't so good that we can make a world that looks more realistic than painted backgrounds. Just look at Code Veronica compared to the Resident Evil remake from 2 years later. It's the same console generation, granted GameCube was a more powerful system, but still the painted backgrounds in that game are stunning. Code Veronica may be a step forward in terms of technology, but it feels like a step back in artistry. The environments just don't look as good or detailed as I want them to, they look kind of bland. And the fact that the camera is usually moving means there's less focus on how these rooms are actually framed. They feel framed more for the gameplay that's happening, and sure, you can say that's better because it's a video game, but Resident Evil was also about cinematic direction and how the camera could make you feel when you enter a room, just like a horror movie. To wrap up on the map and camera design section of this video, I have to mention how amazing it was to return to the mansion. The main villain has reconstructed parts of the Spencer mansion in an underground section of the facility, and when you walk into these recreations, it's such a rush of nostalgia. Even the pushable shelves from the original hallway are still there, with ammo pickups under them. It's so cool. Moving on. In terms of resource management, Code Veronica feels just about as tuned as the first games, which is strict enough if it's your first survival horror game, fairly forgiving if it's not, and totally off balance if you really know what you're doing. There is plenty of health and ammo to find, but they also put you in a lot more situations of combat. I'm down for that. Ever since RE2, the series has been quite action-focused. But I don't know, it's just not very satisfying here. Weapons don't have the impact they had in the original trilogy, and the gore is definitely lacking. What are these headshots? You hear the pop, but their heads are still there? What happened to this? Code Veronica seems to want you to use the crossbow way more than you did in RE2, giving you what seems to be more than 500 arrows for it, and yeah, it's definitely easier to use than the original one, but it sucks. They aren't arrows, they're puny little darts, and they're just not fun to use. I avoided using it until I got low on everything else, and eventually I put away my stubbornness and said, okay, fine, I'll use it whenever it's practical. But man, what a shitty weapon. The explosive tips are very useful, but again, the impact of the shots, like many other weapons, just isn't very satisfying. I think the only weapon I genuinely felt good using was the dual pistols, but they eventually ran out and I never found a refill. It's too bad. I thought the dual pistols were going to be a major part of this game's combat from all the previews I'd seen. Combat can also be pretty frustrating sometimes. There's a target lock-on, which is a nice inclusion, but maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it feels like the enemies have a crazy amount of iframes when they're getting up. I swear, I've gone to shoot dogs and hunters getting off the ground, and whether I'm aiming straight or down, the bullets just go right through them. I'm aware that there are iframes for enemies in the first Resident Evil, but I never experienced anything near this level of enemy invincibility. So the game is very combat forward, but the combat itself isn't that great compared to the PS1 games, and that's a shame because I was constantly in combat. There are many rooms with enemies in high enough numbers to make it very hard to avoid them. The Bandersnatches are horribly annoying at a distance, and I couldn't bear to let any of them live because I hated them so much. That's not a complaint, it's good to hate enemies. Some of the zombies come at you at high speed, and all of them get off the ground really fast, so it's hard to just knock everyone down and run away. Hunters do huge damage with every swipe, and the poisonous hunters? Forget about it, I am not taking any risks. I'm sure that experienced players will tell me it's actually very easy to avoid everyone and save your ammo. Yeah, but not when you don't know where you're going and you're constantly backtracking because you're lost and trying to figure out what to do. And especially not in the sections where you can't save for an extended period of time and can't get to an item box. I ended up in a tough spot here and there, but I never got stuck without enough resources to proceed. However, that's not to say it can't happen. Always use multiple save slots in case you gotta go back and make some different decisions. Code Veronica, more than other survival horror games I know, can absolutely put you in a terrible spot due to the character switching that happens in the second half. Claire and Chris share item boxes, so Chris can use Claire's grenade launcher, which I found necessary several times. But it's impossible to know when these character changes are going to happen, and whatever one character has on them, the other can't use. That can make things really difficult, and I imagine they can softlock the game. I ended up taking control of Chris for a boss fight with no access to an item box beforehand, and I think I was just lucky I had the Magnum on me. If not, I may have needed to go back to a save and replay his part and a Claire section just to try again. The boss fights, in typical Resident Evil tradition, range from to oh god, this is awful. Look, the limited controls of classic survival horror just don't make for good boss fights. Say what you want about the switch to over-the-shoulder camera, but the full directional character control and precision aiming makes for much better boss fights, and this has been true since RE4. It doesn't mean I want every survival horror game to be like that, I don't, and the Nemesis fights in RE3 are pretty good when they incorporate puzzle elements around the room, but most classic survival horror boss fights are not good, no matter how much I love those games. I cannot, in good conscience, call the final fight with Alexia good, trying to target little bugs crawling at you and sinking your bullets into a giant stationary target. I cannot call the Albinoid boss fight in the pool anything other than what it is, the single shittiest moment in Resident Evil history. I read that even though he electrocutes you if you step in the water, which kept me from going in, you can actually make it to the center and grab the item and get out. Well, good to know. Too bad I already took 5 years off my life trying to kill it. Fighting the tyrant on the plane is just plain annoying. Giant hitbox on his arm so I can't run around his swipe, what a pain in the ass. I have read that some people actually like the Nosferatu fight, and I just can't see why. Terrible analog stick aiming on a sniper rifle in the fog while avoiding a poison wall, huge melee swipes that can knock you off the building for an insta-kill. Nope, no thank you. I love the monster itself, the way it looks, how you find it frozen in the ice later on, and the lead up to him. Reading about Nosferatu and seeing him locked up legitimately got me excited to meet him. And that's where I'm going to transition into the storytelling of Code Veronica. Longtime viewers will know that I have an issue with how note-heavy storytelling has become. Horror games are telling more and more complex stories with detailed history behind their locations and characters. And since they don't have the budgets to triple the amount of cutscenes to tell these stories, and they don't want to constantly have to interrupt the player with exposition and flashbacks, they instead jack up the number of notes you need to find in the levels so you can learn about what's going on. In recent years, it's gotten out of control. We are far from the days of classic survival horror titles that had occasional notes scattered about. Now when you play a game like Tormented Souls or Signalis, it's like you're assembling a damn novel. Code Veronica, thankfully, hits the sweet spot. There are definitely more notes than you'd find in the original trilogy, but it's also a much bigger game. It's a more complex story, but limited to only a handful of characters, and told in an easy-to-digest way. Several notes contain vital information for solving puzzles and just generally knowing what you're supposed to be doing, which keeps you interested in reading every note you find. It's done very well. I found myself interested in every detail of the Ashford family and their research. I liked the backstory of the villains, though I would have liked some more development of Alexia and the study of queen ants. Now I have to get to the part of the video that's gonna piss off some Code Veronica fans. Would it be an Under the Mayo video if that didn't happen? I'm aware that there are many people who consider Code Veronica to be the true Resident Evil 3, while Nemesis should be called the spin-off. That is a larger topic for a separate video that I'm currently scripting. When it's done, it'll be linked in the pinned comment below. I hope you'll come back and check that out. For now, I'm just gonna say that I have never liked Resident Evil's turn into the supernatural. The first time I noticed it was in RE0, when the simple world of bioweapon experiments on animals that resulted in a zombie outbreak was suddenly the story of a man who was able to control thousands of mimicking leeches. It got way too silly. And when I saw Wesker straight up teleporting in RE5, I was done with all of it. I decided right then that I don't care what happens next, and I'm just gonna stick to the story of the original trilogy. Company in Raccoon City, zombie outbreak, bioweapon assassins, leave it at that. And for as interesting as I found the story of the Ashford family, for as cool as I thought it was that they were splicing the T-virus with a queen ant to make something new, and they turned their father into the Nosferatu, and Alexia had to be frozen for 15 years, for as cool as I found all of that, it goes out the window for me when Alexia turns into a fucking Ninja Gaiden boss and psychically creates fire. It's ridiculous. This is also the game where Wesker, a man that was dead at the end of RE1 no matter what ending you got, killed by the Tyrant or found dead by the power station, is miraculously back to life and now doing teleport punches. This is when Resident Evil's story went off the rails, and characters started acting like they were in Devil May Cry, also being developed around this time. And where before we had a simple story of betrayal by a team captain, a corrupt mercenary working for Umbrella, or a scientist tragically assassinated in his lab, now we have hilariously evil villains laughing maniacally every chance they get.
I so want to enjoy this.
If you're gonna go over the top, go all out. Go totally nuts like RE4. At least RE4 doesn't try to be a classic Resident Evil game. If you're gonna change the tone, make the rest of the game complement it. That's why I respect RE4. I don't think Code Veronica benefits from any of this, and it certainly doesn't benefit from Steve, who is the most obnoxious character in the entire series. Whoa, Steve, how about we don't try to kiss Claire while she's unconscious?
Shut up! I don't want to talk about it!
So yeah, I do actually like the main story being told in Code Veronica, but I think the supernatural aspect was a huge mistake, and I find the inclusion of Wesker to not only be completely unnecessary, but also the point where the series jumped the shark. I'm also not the biggest fan of Claire or Chris. I'm a Jill and Leon guy, I'm sorry. Part of the reason I never played this game was because it was focused on two characters I don't particularly care about. And after playing it, I'm still completely uninterested in them. I'm not calling them bad characters, I'm just saying I'm not into them. That's about all I have to say on Code Veronica. Overall, I thought it was really good. I wouldn't put it in my top 5 or anything, but in terms of storytelling, map exploration, and puzzles, I'm pretty happy with it. I regret that I took so long to play it, but it is what it is. You can be sure you'll see this in my Best of the Year video next January. Thanks everyone for pushing me to finally play Code Veronica. And fuck Steve.